We have to be very selective. For instance, Titanic was a big hit in China, and I watched the film. I also saw Gladiator and Forrest Gump. For instance, the movie called Gladiator describes a part of history in the Roman Empire. There may be a slight deviation from the historical truth, but this is something we fully understand. It is an artistic creation.
Al Gore, George W. Bush, one of them is going to be President of the United States, while you are President of China. If they are watching right now, what would you want to say to them about future U.S. relations with China? Serious question.
As I said to you earlier, I have a lot of good friends within the leadership of the two parties and many members of the two parties.
So you give money to both their campaigns?
Are you joking? We have never done such things. I believe that whoever becomes president will try to improve the friendly relations between China and the United States. This is in the strategic interest of the whole world. Someone asked me not to believe any unfriendly remarks candidates might make about China because once elected they will be friendly. I only hope that's true.
Well, that's what Bill Clinton did. He made unfriendly remarks about China, and after he was elected, he became quite different about China, didn't he?
You know that.
Many people believe, Mr. President, that you have made a deal, you and your party, with the people of China. You give them economic freedom, social freedom, to work, live, where and how they want.
Traveling.
And in exchange, they give up any right to challenge the authority of the Communist Party. That's about it, yes?
Let me be frank with you. I think China and the United States differ greatly in terms of our values. You Americans always use your own values and logic in making judgments about the specific situations or, say, political situation of other countries. The American values emphasize deal-making. But what we value most is a good collective where people support and assist each other. You also have mutual support in your country, but our perception of the word deal is different from yours in the West. The purpose and principles of the Communist Party are to serve the people. In this process, we win the trust and confidence of our people. Since the founding of the People's Republic, we have traveled through twists and turns in our decades of developing the nation. The policy of reform and opening up, initiated by Deng Xiaoping, was a great success. So now, we are building in China socialism with Chinese characteristics. But people in the West always hope that China can become a capitalist country. But with only one system around, will the world be a very dull place? I still believe the world should be a diverse and colorful one. We want to learn from the Western world everything advanced and progressive, including science and technology, and its experience in managing the economy. Of course, this must be combined with specific conditions here. And it is exactly because we have been following these principles that we have scored great achievements in the past few decades.
This follows the business about the United States being power mad. If the United States were to go ahead with the missile system that President Clinton has talked about, would China respond by building more missiles?
I think it's just normal for China to gradually strengthen our capability for national defense.
That's it? Because you complain bitterly about the possibility of a expanded missile defense by the United States. That's when you began to talk about our being, or somebody, your newspapers began to talk about our being power mad and not interested in peace and so forth.
We are opposed to a national missile defense and theater missile defense plans. We are unambiguous about this.
Because?
Because that would create an atmosphere where people cannot possibly engage in the effort to achieve the common task of peace and development. Our national security interests must not be impaired in any way. Your missile defense may naturally be perceived by people as a kind of threat.
A threat against whom?
It is a threat against us. For instance, we are worried about the possibility of Taiwan being incorporated into a U.S.-Japan missile defense system.
You've said that you want to improve relations with the United States, yes? Okay. What would you do to improve relations with the United States, Mr. President?
Most importantly, the leaders of both countries should scale a greater height and adopt a long-term perspective. We need to stand high and look far. And in fact, when I was having my very first meeting with President Clinton in 1993, I quoted the Chinese lines, "To have a grander sight, you must scale a great height." And when Vice President Gore traveled to China, I also quoted some lines from the Song Dynasty. It goes, "I do not fear that floating clouds might block my view, because I am standing on the highest peak." The United States is a much younger country compared with China. So maybe you have fewer historical burdens, and your people demonstrate an innovative, pioneering spirit.
You are? You are. It seems to me. A dictator, an authoritarian.
No, but I, very frank speaking, I don't agree with your point. I'm dictator.
I know you don't. I know that you don't. But
people,
there's an old American phrase about if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and so forth, it's a duck. A dictator is somebody who forcibly, whether it's free press or free religion or free private enterprise, now you're beginning to come a little closer to that. Father knows best, and if you get in the way of Father, Father will take care of you. That's what a dictator is, in effect, politically.
I think your way of describing what things are like here in China is as absurd as what the Arabian Nights may sound like. The reality in China is that we have leadership by the Communist Party. According to law, the party only makes recommendations. Everything needs to be approved by the National People's Congress.
By the National People's Congress.
Of course.
All of whom are members of the party.
No.
And all of the ministers. Their nominations are approved by the National People's Congress. And also the leadership of the State Council. So the State Council looks after the day-to-day business of the country. The supreme power of the Communist Party lies with the National Congress. And the National Congress chooses the Central Committee. And the Central Committee has a Politburo. The Politburo has a standing committee of which I am a member. So every week the standing committee members have a meeting. And the meeting is held in an open, democratic atmosphere. When one member of the standing committee has an objection, I will not make a decision.
Look, one last question. Dictatorship. You know what? When I see the picture of that one young man in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, that to me means Chinese dictatorship. That's a wonderful symbol that hits me in my heart about dictatorship in China.
Don't need translation. I know what you say.
I'm very willing to answer these questions because